Hello learners, welcome back to the course on learning and development in organization. Today as part of the 6th module, we will be discussing something which is very critical and in fact very close to my heart, which is learning and development specific to knowledge management. So knowledge management has been my research area for the last 7-8 years, and I have been specifically working on knowledge hiding and knowledge sharing specifically. So with respect to learning and development, let's have a different discussion altogether. How knowledge management is vital for this, we have to categorically understand what is knowledge management, and how it is carving out a way towards learning and development interventions, as we have discussed in the previous session. I am Dr. Cyril Issac. I am an assistant professor at the School of Business, Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. Now, when you look into learning and development specifically, I think that we should understand what happens when knowledge comes in specific to the organization and how the organization manages this particular knowledge. So, introducing you all to knowledge management, this will be our underlying theme for the day. Knowledge management is a bit like a travel insurance. You can only wish you had it when it is too late. So this is specific to what we have already seen in our intro video. If you have gone through that, specific to the learning and development, we always tend to chase down the bus. If you have gone through that introductory video, you will connect to that. Similarly, in case of knowledge management, we always want it, but at the last minute. So let's look into that from the beginning. Let's understand knowledge management holistically. Traditionally, the prevailing belief for that knowledge was power. You must have already heard this, knowledge is power. But you would have also heard some series, in certain series, some dialogue is that power is power. But whatever said and done, when you are telling that knowledge is power, it means that you are having certain inherent advantages when you are having that particular knowledge, and that is what makes knowledge management critical. That is what makes knowledge management essential in an organization. So when people withhold that, or they don't share, or they hide, let me put it like this, knowledge hiding is the intentional withholding of knowledge when requested. When you are looking into the definition of knowledge hiding, that when requested part is critical. If you are removing that when requested, knowledge hiding becomes actually employee silence. You are not asking, that's why I am not telling anything. Had you asked, I would have shared that particular knowledge or particular information. So this is what generally people do not understand. People tend to misunderstand knowledge hiding from employee silence. Employee silence is not knowledge hiding. Knowledge hiding is when you know that a particular person knows, or you are requesting somebody to tell something, even though he or she knows, they are not telling that. What could be an extended scenario for this? Let's say today they are not telling this. Tomorrow they have to ask something to you. Most probably you are not going to tell it back, or you are going to reciprocate in the exact way that he or she did to you. So what essentially it brings in? It brings an element, it brings an environment of distrust. This distrust, if it keeps on going across the entire organization, what you are left with is a distrust loop. And many organizations, mark my word, many organizations technically fail because of this distrust loop existing within the particular organization. So let's understand this as the background of knowledge management. Let's all understand that this is why knowledge management is critical. Let's understand from the beginning. Let's look into what knowledge is, how is it different from information, how is it different from data. So all these aspects we'll quickly discuss. When you are looking into knowledge as a powerful resource, the perspective on its use has evolved significantly, especially within the organizational setting. So the modern approach typically emphasizes that knowledge must be shared to expand and create value. This is something which is more broader in attitude, in the approach, whereas initially people tend to hide knowledge, but this is what the philosophy of today is. So at its core, Knowledge management revolves around facilitating and promoting the exchange of knowledge. Now, let's address some trivia. Let's understand something from the basics. What's the difference between data, information, knowledge? Many a time we tend to use it synonymously, but please do understand these are distinct, discrete terms. Data is a number or word or letter without any context. This is what delineates, differentiates from information and knowledge. So, data is a number or a word, or it can even be a letter without any context. Let's take an example. If we are given numbers like 1 and 7, they do not mean much to us. So, at this level of understanding, these numbers are mere data. Now, when you are looking into, or generally I use this example, let us say typical number 7, 8, 1, 0, 3, 9, this does not mean anything to us. This typically do not have any understanding, right. We come to the second level. A mere collection of data is not information. This means that if there is no relation between the pieces of data, then it's not information. So, what makes a collection of data information is the understanding of the relationship between the pieces of data or between the collection of data and other formation. So, in the previous case where we looked just into 1 and 7 in case of data, let us say if 7 represents the number of days in a week and 1 represents 1 week, we now have a useful information that there are 7 days in a week. Now, so in general, information remains relatively static in time and linear. So, basically you have, let us say, an understanding that this can come together making some sense, some series, typically contributing to a pin code of a particular place, none other than IIT Guwahati. So, basically this is something as critical as information. When information is analyzed and these patterns are recognized, you know that this means something, then it becomes knowledge, it transforms into knowledge. So, if we observe that every 7 days a new week begins, we can predict the schedule, we can plan tasks, we can manage time effectively. So, unlike the static information, knowledge evolves, allowing for deeper insights and decision making. So, I hope that this quickly clarifies the difference between data, information and knowledge. Now, another important aspect here is the type of knowledge. Many a time we tend to understand knowledge as knowledge, but please, if you do not know, please make a clear understanding here. There are different types of knowledge. One is the most significant tacit knowledge, another is what we generally know, which is explicit knowledge. Tacit knowledge resides in an individual's mind, gained through experience, whereas explicit knowledge is more explicit, as the word suggests. It's stored in documents, it's stored in systems or products or processes. So, these are typically what you understand by explicit knowledge. Now, when you look into the characteristics, please note both types of this knowledge can result from interactions, innovations and collaborations. There is no doubt about that. They are an integral part to an organization's daily operations and goal achievement, and these categorically enable organizations to typically adapt to new challenges and evolving situations. So, when you talk about the tacit knowledge, many a time what happens, if you have seen in your organization or observed in your organization, let us say a new employee comes in, an older employee, he might or she might be retiring or moving to another organization. What happens typically is that this particular individual who has been trained, who has had a lot of learning within the organization, let us say for a decade, 10-15 years he has been in the organization, and at the time he is moving out, without transferring the knowledge to the incoming candidate, it creates a total vacuum within the individual. So, the problem with that is that information, that knowledge specifically should have been codified, should have been put in some knowledge management portal within the organization, that would have transformed the chunk of knowledge into institutional memory. Now, the benefit of institutional memory is any individual coming into the organization, he or she can readily look into that information memory or the institutional memory and can start working from day one. Whatever training, whatever learning and development interventions the organization has invested, I will use the word invested in that particular individual, it might not go futile. So, this is something which you have to understand. So, the impetus with respect to knowledge management is more severe when you are looking into tacit knowledge than explicit knowledge, because tacit knowledge always stays with a particular person. It stays with a particular person's mind. So, that is why in the team also, in some teams you will see that some organizations put people in cross-functional teams so that they also pick up something from them, because many a time these knowledge that is available is tacit. It is always how you absorb as a new employee that is critical. So, if you are a new employee and you are listening to me, try to accumulate as much as knowledge as possible in the initial years. Let us look into more details of knowledge. When you are looking into knowledge, we have to understand how we can manage knowledge. So, knowledge management becomes vital. Knowledge management is nothing but an integration of various aspects of organization, including people, technology, and organizational process. So, all the infrastructure, all the individual resources, all the organization process coming together, what you have is the knowledge management. So, knowledge management, if you want a functional definition, is defined as a process of creating, identifying and managing knowledge of an organization and structuring it for effective and efficient use among its employees and teams. So, let us quickly understand what is knowledge management in detail. Knowledge management, if you ask me, it involves several key components, starting from 1, utilizing available knowledge from external resources. Whatever comes into the organization, you are certainly indebted to that and trying to use that. Incorporating and storing knowledge within business processes, products and services. So, that is where a knowledge management portal becomes critical. So, that will add to the institutional memory. Then, documenting and organizing knowledge in databases and records, encouraging knowledge expansion through organizational culture and incentives. And please note, knowledge management is also about facilitating the knowledge sharing and transfer across the organization, evaluating knowledge assets and their impact consistently. So, you look into knowledge management, please understand this is what knowledge management is. But again, being a researcher in the area, I do understand, and I have to tell you, I am morally bound to tell you that 95% of the research literature, 95% of the, this is interesting to note that 95% of the literature, research literature pertaining to knowledge management talks about knowledge sharing. But still, knowledge management is not efficient. The reason to that is there is a diametrically opposite phenomenon that exists, which is knowledge hiding. So, in our research papers, we have categorically explained the genesis and why it is there, what are the factors affecting knowledge hiding. We have also tried to compare it with different contexts on an individualistic culture basis, on a collectivistic culture basis. We have tried to compare it with US, India, situations or contexts like that. We have also tried to understand the knowledge sharing propensity with respect to the experience. You are just into the organization up to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 10 to 20 years. What is your knowledge sharing or knowledge hiding propensity? We have also studied this. If you are interested, we can share those papers. It's readily available online. When you are looking into the outputs with respect to my research profile, you will see that specific to knowledge management, we have found out the critical importance of knowledge management. One of the critical aspect was what we studied with respect to knowledge hiding and sharing with respect to power, expert power and referent power, how it affects the congruence and incongruence, and how it affects typically the knowledge sharing and knowledge hiding activity. So all this categorically underlines one thing, that knowledge management is vital, but our focus primarily has been on knowledge sharing, and that is a wrong intention, or that is a wrong move. So many studies have come up post 2020. Many studies have come up specific to knowledge hiding specifically, which categorically looks into the knowledge management in general. Now let's understand what are the different pillars of knowledge management in detail. When you're looking into knowledge management in detail, we have to understand the first critical pillar would be the management and organization. It's all about leadership commitment. Successful knowledge management requires strong commitment from top management. Leaders must actively participate in knowledge sharing initiatives and set an example for employees. They have a strategic role. Knowledge management has a typical strategic role. Organizations should integrate knowledge management into their overall strategy, ensuring that it aligns with the business goals. There should be a dedicated knowledge management structure, establishing somebody like a CKO. Many a time we do not have that or do not hear this. Chief Knowledge Officer or Knowledge Management Department helps oversee the knowledge process, encourages the collaboration and allocate resources effectively. You have customer knowledge management. Organizations must manage knowledge about customers and suppliers to improve relationships and gain competitive advantage through effective CRM, customer relationship management. Then you have another significant pillar, which is the infrastructure. You talk about technology as an enabler. A robust IT infrastructure is absolutely necessary for capturing, storing and sharing knowledge efficiently. There are some core components. You look into the content organization tools such as databases or taxonomies. There are some search tools typically for retrieving information quickly. There are some expert locator systems to connect employees with knowledgeable colleagues. Then there are some collaboration tools for organizations operating across multiple locations, digital tools like portals or virtual workspaces and even email systems enhance the connectivity and the knowledge sharing. The third most important pillar in this particular case of knowledge management is people and culture. You look into people and culture, you will understand that knowledge sharing mindset is critical. Employees are the primary holders of tacit knowledge. It could be personal expertise or experience, making their engagement, making their involvement crucial. There are organizational structure aspects. A flexible, decentralized structure fosters knowledge exchange, whereas rigid hierarchies, they can typically hinder collaboration. Then you look into the HR and knowledge management. The human resource practice specifically must support KM, support knowledge management by recruiting individuals who value knowledge sharing, by providing training programs to enhance the expertise, rewarding employees who contribute knowledge to the organization, and finally you have the motivation and trust. A culture that encourages open communication, a culture that encourages rewards knowledge sharing ensures long-term knowledge management success. So both intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, bonuses, promotions play a crucial role in encouraging the participation. Then you have the fourth aspect, content management system. You look into managing the digital knowledge. Organizations need structured systems to store, organize and retrieve internal and external information. Content updating and access. Employees typically should have clear roles and responsibilities for maintaining and updating the digital content, ensuring information remains relevant and useful. There might be, automated processes that help manage content efficiently, ensuring that the knowledge reaches the right people at the right time. We also look into the knowledge management life cycle now. You have an idea with respect to knowledge management now. So, the knowledge management process consists of a series of steps, from forming a continuous collection of knowledge and a cycle. So, this 4-step process includes capturing knowledge, organizing knowledge, refining and disseminating. We will start with capturing knowledge. The first phase of KM's life cycle, or the knowledge management life cycle, involves capturing knowledge from various resources or various areas or sources such as emails, audio files, sometimes digital documents, and even many more such options. So, it is crucial to collect information from all available sources without immediately assessing its usefulness. Only after, let us say, thorough testing, can the value of the captured knowledge be determined. So, knowledge management systems, if you ask me, play a key role in this stage by converting raw knowledge into structured format accessible to multiple users. The second typical aspect in terms of the knowledge management life cycle is organizing knowledge. You talk about organizing knowledge in the life cycle, the second component. Once knowledge is captured, it must be systematically organized for easy retrieval and application. I hope you agree with that. So, methods such as indexing or clustering, cataloging, filtering, and even codifying help structure the information effectively. So, key consideration in this phase include speed, it includes user friendliness, it includes accessibility, it includes accuracy. So, all these aspects are typical to organizing knowledge. Then comes the third process, which is refining knowledge. You talk about refining knowledge after ongoing organizing aspects of knowledge, the refinement comes in. This stage often involves the data mining, where explicit knowledge stored in databases is transformed into tacit knowledge. So, data mining tools identify patterns, they predict behaviors and help anticipate potential issues based on stored data. For instance, analyzing sales record of a particular let us say tennis racket brand could reveal a seasonal trend linking its purchase to equipment sales or the sports equipment sales altogether. Now, the fourth process is transferring knowledge. Following the refinement, if you look into knowledge, knowledge must be distributed or transferred to those who need it. So, this includes making information accessible through tutorials, guidelines and predictive models that alert users to potential project or HR related outcomes. So, please note, a key principle here is to prevent knowledge from remaining stagnant in databases. Instead, it should be shared with authorized users to enhance the organization's competitive advantage. Now, let us move into the typical aspects concerning these four processes. When you are looking into capturing, we can always relate to these processes that brings in all the knowledge like data entry, scanning, voice input, interviewing, brainstorming, etc. You look into the organizing part, you will see cataloging, indexing, filtering, linking, codifying that comes into the organizing part. Then looking into the refining, you can see contextualizing, collaborating, compacting, projecting, mining that comes into the refining aspect. And finally, for transfer, you have flow, the sharing, alert, a push when it comes to the transfer aspects. So, let us now look into the role of trust. I have already given you a certain input into the distrust loop, if you recollect. the emergence of that and how it rapidly spreads across our organization. I've already told about this distrust loop, but let's understand the relevance of trust. For knowledge-based organizations to thrive, they must function as learning systems. A crucial factor in fostering knowledge flow is creating a conducive environment where employees feel comfortable sharing the insights, their expertise, experiences, etc. So, this process typically is rooted in trust. Now, when employees trust that their contributions will be acknowledged and rewarded fairly, they are more likely to share knowledge freely. So, conversely, a lack of trust leads to knowledge hiding, hoarding, and skepticism within the organization. So, this is what I gave you an input before. Now, trust is built through integrity. It is built through open communication and active employee involvement in decision making. So, organizations must intentionally cultivate trust by addressing key areas such as human resources, management initiatives, executive support, and employee inclusion. Trust serves typically as the glue that holds an organization together, particularly in unpredictable and competitive environments. So, without trust, open and honest communication becomes impossible. Now, let's look into how we can build trust in organization. So, to develop trust across all levels of an organization, it is essential to break down all the hierarchical barriers and traditional control-based structures. Instead of micromanaging employees, if you ask me, organizations should typically empower them and foster open communication between, let's say, managers and workers. So, performance evaluation should allow employees to express how they contributed to a sense of community within the teams and departments. Some key strategies would be decentralizing the decision making to encourage the teamwork, shifting from control-based management to results-oriented approach, ensuring employees receive the credit for their contributions, revisiting the company's mission and ethics policies to align with new organizational values and improve the communication through surveys and brainstorming sessions, enhancing employee responsibilities and accountability while removing unnecessary restrictions, recognizing employees through rewards such as, say, Knowledge Employee of the Month or programs or public acknowledgements, and finally implementing training programs to enhance employees' commitment to knowledge sharing. Now, let's understand a typical most famous knowledge management model, which is the Nonaka and Takeuchi SECI model of knowledge creation. So, anybody who has gone through any course in knowledge management would have definitely come across it. I am not going to detail in this because we have already covered this in our OB subject in the NPTEL platform, organizational behavior subject in the NPTEL platform, but I would like to recreate a different perspective here. The SECI model, SECI model developed by Nonaka and Takeuchi, widely recognized framework it is for knowledge creation and management. So, it typically explains how organizations create, how they share and how they utilize knowledge by transforming tacit knowledge like personal experience based knowledge into more explicit knowledge, that is more codified, more documented knowledge, and vice versa. So, this process is represented by 4 continuous and interrelated modes of knowledge conversion. The first one is socialization. So, we start with socialization, that is tacit to tacit. Process is that the knowledge is shared directly between individuals through observation, through interaction and shared experience. So, I will take an example here. Let us say an apprentice learning from a mentor by shadowing and participating in tasks rather than through formal training, that is socialization. When you look into externalization, the second process, it is more of tacit to explicit. So, a tacit knowledge is articulated and transformed into explicit knowledge through, let us say, discussions or metaphors or models or documentation, whatever be the options be. A software developer, let us understand, explaining coding techniques in a guidebook, or maybe a brainstorming session where employees articulate their experiences in structured formats can be an example to this externalization. The third process is the combination, which is more of explicit to explicit. Different sources of explicit knowledge, they are integrated, structured and systematized to create new explicit knowledge. So, as an example, I can take a company compiling, let's say, customer feedback, or let's say financial reports, or market research into strategic business plan. And finally, you have internalization, that is explicit to tacit. Explicit knowledge is absorbed and internalized by individuals, becoming part of their personal experience. So, employees studying company manuals and applying the learned concepts in real world scenarios, developing new skills. So, typically the SECI model is consisting of 4 processes: socialization, externalization, combination and internalization. Now, let us make it more interesting. Let us see the SECI model as a knowledge spiral. When you are looking into SECI model, it is not a one-time process. It operates as a continuous cycle where each phase builds on the previous, creating a knowledge spiral altogether that drives innovation and organizational learning. So, this model, as a spiral, it will keep on increasing. This model highlights the importance of collaboration and knowledge sharing within an organization, reinforcing that both tacit and explicit knowledge must be actively managed for sustained competitive advantage. So, when you are looking into this particular spiral arrangement, so you see that at the y axis you have something like building the field, and here you have learning by doing. So, specifically when you look into the Nonak and Takeuchi model, it is more about the SECI model. Specifically, it is more about the process. It is, rather than being compartmentalized into different compartments like socialization, externalization, combination and internalization, it is more of an upward spiral. It creates more knowledge wealth into the organization. So, this is what I wanted to introduce you to, which is the beautiful topic of knowledge management. I hope you had interesting takeaway with respect to this. Please note, whatever knowledge the organization is getting should be transformed or should be converted into an asset in the organization. And for this, you need to have some explicit portals and platforms which actually captures knowledge and preserves it as an institutional memory. So, this underscores the success of any bigger organization. You look into Google, you look into Amazon, we have taken these examples quite a few times in the previous few sessions. You look into their success, ultimately it boils down to one thing, that knowledge management is efficient and kicking in these organizations. That's all from today's session. We'll see with more updates regarding learning and development in the next class. Till then, please take care. Bye-bye.